Hello and welcome to the I Hit Drums, a beginner's guide podcast with me, Mark, your teacher for this series. In the last lesson, we were working on the song Forget It, which involved using the hi-hats, the crash cymbal, and the ride cymbal. Today we're going to work on developing left foot control and use this to open and close the hi-hats whilst we play. On page 62, you'll see a familiar 8th beat hi-hat pattern. But on the and of 2, there is an O above this, and then on beat 3, a plus symbol. The O means open, and the plus symbol means close. All of the hi-hat patterns we've played so far have been written as a closed hi-hat. We're now going to start adding the occasional open hi-hat to some of these grooves by working through 4 different scenarios. The 4 scenarios in question are as follows: closing the hi-hats with a bass drum, opening the hi-hats with a bass drum, closing the hi-hats with a snare drum, and opening the hi-hats with a snare drum. So let's begin with the first scenario, which you'll find on page 63, exercise 10.1, closing the hi-hats with a bass drum. In each of these exercises, you'll play the hi-hat as you normally would in an 8th note groove, only whenever you come across one of the O hits, you're going to lift the left foot and hit the hi-hat as you normally would. Try and get the lift of the left foot to match the hit of the right hand. When you get to a hi-hat hit that features the plus symbol above it, this is when you're going to lower that left foot and close the hi-hats together. You also need to hit the hi-hats at the same time. Initially, you might find that the speed that the foot is closing the hi-hats is slightly different to the moment that you're hitting the cymbals. Work on getting these two things to land together for a nice, clean sound. In this first scenario, you're always going to be closing the hi-hat at the same time you're hitting the bass drum. What this means is that both feet will be coming down together. As you go to strike that bass drum with the right foot, the left foot is coming down to close the hi-hats. That is the main principle of this scenario, both feet coming down together. Also, notice that in exercise 10.1, there are no snare drum hits. It's all bass drum. So let's try the first example in exercise 10.1, and we'll do this at 40 BPM. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, so did you find that the feet landed together there? And did you also find that when you went to strike the hi-hat on beat 3, you were striking it at the same time that the foot was closing the cymbals together? Maybe that first attempt was too soon to tell. So let's give it another try. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Moving on to the second example in 10.1, we have pretty much the same thing, only it's on the and of 3 where we open the hi-hats and beat 4 where we close the hi-hats. Let's give this a try at 40 BPM. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, so far we haven't looped either of those first 2 examples, but if you look at the music, you will see that there are repeat cymbals, beginning and end. So ideally, set your metronome to 40 BPM, or faster if you're comfortable, and loop those exercises around and around, at least 4 times. We are going to try this with the third example, because as you'll see, there's an open hi-hat on the very end of this groove, on the and of 4, and we're actually closing the hi-hats on beat 1. The same scenario is still taking place, only now it's at the end of the groove and the beginning of the groove. Let's give it a try, 2 times around at 40 BPM. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, how did that go? Should we try it 4 times around? Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Moving on to the 4th example, we now have 2 open hi-hats in this exercise. As one of these open hi-hats is at the end of the bar, we're going to loop this around 4 times. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. In the 5th example of exercise 10.1, we have 2 open hi-hats which follow on from each other. Not one hit after the other, we are still closing the hi-hat in between, but we're going to be opening the hi-hats, closing the hi-hats, opening the hi-hats, closing the hi-hats again. And remember, both of these closing hi-hat positions, we're going to be bringing down the bass drum at the same time, so both feet are coming down together. Let's give it a try at 40 BPM. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now finally, the 6th example, we have 4 open hi-hats. We're actually moving from closed to open to closed to open all the way through this groove. This looks harder than it is. What you actually have is both feet coming down, both feet going up, both feet coming down, both feet going up, and so on. So let's give this one a try 2 times through at 40 BPM. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So now you can work through exercise 10.1, continuing at 40 BPM, or if you wish, try that at faster speeds such as 60 BPM or even 80 BPM. But we're now going to move on to page 64, where we have exercise 10.2, opening the hi-hats with a bass drum. Now in the previous scenario, both feet were coming down together because we were closing the hi-hats at the same time that we played the bass drum. In this new scenario, the feet are actually going to be going in opposite directions, because as the bass drum goes down, the hi-hat foot is going to be lifting up to create that open hi-hat sound. You might find this scenario starts to challenge your balance. If you're not sitting correctly on your stool and actually have your centre of gravity on the stool, then you might find that you're starting to lean one way or the other. Try not rely on one foot to keep you balanced, because up to now, before we've tried these open hi-hats, you've probably been relying on that left foot to keep you balanced while you've been playing the bass drum. You can't do that now. If you're not quite sure if you are off balance, all you need to do with these exercises is play them in front of a mirror. If you are off balance, you'll notice that you're rocking one way or the other. For some of you, this might put a bit of strain on your core, but that's where the balance is going to come from, so you're using that core strength as well as being seated correctly on your stool. In exercise 10.2, we're still only using the hi-hats and the bass drum, so there's no snare drum hits to worry about at this stage. Let's try the first example at 40 BPM. And remember, when you go for that open hi-hat, your feet are going to be working in opposite directions. Let's give it a try at 40 BPM. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, I'm sure you'll agree that this scenario is a little bit more challenging, but hopefully you got on well with that first example, so let's move on to the next. More or less the same thing, only now we have 2 of these open hi-hats, one on beat 2 and one on beat 4. Let's give this a try at 40 BPM. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now let's try the third example, where we have an open hi-hat followed by a closed hi-hat, followed by an open hi-hat, followed by a closed hi-hat. So this one especially might challenge your balance. So again, we're going to start this slow, going at 40 BPM. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. In the fourth example of exercise 10.2, we're starting to vary the rhythm of the bass drum pattern. So we only have one bass drum in this example, and this time it's on the and position rather than on the quarter note position. Let's give this a try at 40 BPM. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. In the fifth example, we're actually combining the current scenario with the previous one. We're going to be opening the hi-hats with a bass drum on the and of 2, and then we're also closing the hi-hats with a bass drum, like we did in the previous scenario. What this means is that the feet will be going in opposite directions and then falling together. Let's give this a try at 40 BPM. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. In the sixth example, we've got that regular quarter note bass drum pattern returning, and we're also adding in an extra bass drum on the and of 2. This is going to give us 3 bass drum hits in a row. And whilst we do that, we're also going to have that open-closed hi-hat situation where the feet are going to go in opposite directions on the and of 2 and then landing together on beat 3. This is quite a challenging one, but let's give it a try at 40 BPM. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, now finally, the last example in exercise 10.2, we have an open-closed hi-hat situation, but we've got a varying bass drum pattern throughout this. So we don't have that bass drum on beat 2, but we do have extra bass drums on the and of 1 and the and of 2. So quite a challenging pattern, this one, especially for your balance. Let's give this a try at 40 BPM. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. We're actually going to leave it there for this lesson. There's quite a lot of material to get used to in those first 2 scenarios. We'll look at the other 2 in the following lesson. These exercises in particular might require a bit more feedback. So if you do want some assistance with these, you can get in touch with me by going to Instagram, where you can find me at ihitdrums, or you can contact me by going to facebook.com/ihitdrumsuk. For a small fee, you can send me a video of your progress, and I'll get back to you with some information and instruction in my own video. There's also the option of online lessons with me, which take place via Zoom or Skype, and these can happen wherever you are in the world, providing that the time zones make sense for both of us. In the next lesson, we'll start looking at the next 2 scenarios, and we'll also get you geared up to try the next play-along song, Bang the Plank. Until then, enjoy! I Hit Drums, A Beginner's Guide can be purchased as a paperback through Amazon or as an ebook through Amazon, Apple Books, not iTunes as I've been saying all this time, and Kobo. Just search for I Hit Drums, A Beginner's Guide. I mean, how long has it not been iTunes?